Hello everyone, my name is Noah. I'm a poor guy from the farthest reaches of the city. I have 2 brothers in my family, my mum and me, and we all share a small apartment. Mum works and I go to school with the younger ones. From the last one, by the way, I was recently expelled for bad behaviour. I wouldn't say that I was aggressive, it was just that the teacher wasn't in the mood. We had our own rules there, and if someone tries to send you away, you should not give in any case. Otherwise, you'd be on your knees for the rest of your school years. And in that class, the teacher took me for a ride. Like, I think I'm such a tough guy, but in fact, I'm not worth anything. This undermined my authority amongst my classmates, so I jumped up from my seat and sassed them. Are you trying to tell me that I don't have the guts? Like I don't take any responsibility for my words? Like, yes, Noah, you're just showing off, but you're not. You shouldn't say that. You're the teacher. That's why I decide how to talk to you. This is the 3rd reprimand to you. Go to the principal. You're in for a nasty surprise. Expel me? You wouldn't dare. You don't have the guts. Who are you to decide whether to expel me or not? Deputy principal since yesterday. Oh shit. Go ahead. That day, I was forbidden to go to that school again. I didn't know how to tell my mum about it for a long time, so I just kept quiet whilst looking for other schools. It took me more than 1.5 weeks to find one. Mum was already anxiously asking questions. Noah, is everything okay? Yeah, why? You don't say anything. Usually the principal or teacher calls me and complains about you almost every day, but it's been over a week. Oh, Mum, maybe your son is getting wise. I'll be glad, as long as you don't get expelled. It's not that. I've got it under control. I was ashamed to admit that my mum's worst confessions came true, but I couldn't fucking disappoint her again, so I had to lie. I went back to my school where, as always, there was total chaos. A man I didn't know came in, standing there distraught. A bag with important documents had been stolen from him. I knew who might have done it, so I volunteered to help. I gave a couple of cops a nudge and quickly found the thief. It was Kay, famous for pickpocketing. Under the pressure of my fists, he quickly returned the stolen goods. The man thanked me and then asked me what he could do for me. I jokingly threw in the line, "Find me a new school." You want a school? Yeah, I even got kicked out of this one. Quid pro quo, I'll take you to mine. What do you mean? Who are you? Principal of Lincoln High. Will you study with us? And then I was so surprised. For the first time in my life, I was so lucky. Of course I said yes. This school is different from the rabble where I had studied all my life. I promised to get my act together and not let myself down. No fighting, no stealing. Deal? Deal. I decided not to tell my mum yet. I don't know what will happen. My first day of school was harder than I thought. The local kids didn't accept me, especially when they heard where I was from. But it was Connor, like the biggest, toughest student, who showed off the most. He was always picking on me, calling me names, and a couple of times we almost got into a fight. And every time I remembered the principal's words and my promise not to fight. I carefully restrained emotions, tried to distract, not to pay attention to Connor, but how hard it is, you have no idea. And the next time I was walking down the hall, Connor tripped me, and I fell face down. Somebody had put a piece of cake there beforehand, and I hit it. Everyone laughed, and I stained my new t-shirt. That's it, you got me, I said to myself under my breath, and ran towards Connor. And suddenly the figure of the headmaster appeared in front of me as if to say, "Is there a problem, Noah?" "Oh, no, it's okay. I'm just rushing to class." "That's good. Go." I'm gonna get you anyway, I thought, and I went to his house that night. I wanted to get my ass kicked, punched him in the face a few times out of school so he'd stop bullying me. I got into his room, but no one was there, so I searched his room for something to embarrass him with, but I couldn't find anything. I was just about to run out when someone entered the room. I quickly jumped under the bed and hid. 2 people came in, a familiar male voice and a female voice. They were arguing about something. "You always do. Look what has become of our son. He hasn't even been home anymore, all because of you." "Stop it. Are you doing that again? We've talked about everything." "Go to your mistress. Go on." "That's enough. Stop it. This house has become unbearable because of your tantrums." "It's all because of you. Cheater. I hate you. What's going on here? Are you doing it again? If you're going to fight, at least don't do it in my room. Sorry, son. We've been looking for you. I'm home. It's all right. Go on. Son, there's a geometry test in school tomorrow, remember? Yes, Dad. And then it hit me. That's our director. So he's the father? Holy crap. And his parents are getting a divorce. Connor sat down on the bed and then roared. I felt a bit sorry for him. Then my mum called and I got caught. Connor almost knocked my teeth out, but I told him if he dared do that, I'd tell everyone at school about his whining and show the video. I know it wasn't nice of me, but he forced me to take extreme measures. From that moment on, we switched roles. Now I humiliated him as much as I could, and he silently tolerated it. I could throw dirt at him, write on his books, slap him around, call him names, and he would piss on me. I don't argue, it felt good, especially when I remembered the way he bullied me. But on the other hand, there was still something burning inside me. I returned home where I met my furious mother. She'd found out that I was expelled right from the doorstep yelling, "You failed me again! How could you? You cannot stay in any school! What's wrong with you? I'm tired of blushing in front of everybody. Will you calm down or not? What kind of example are you setting for your brothers? Aren't you ashamed?" I tried to tell her, to explain that I now go to a more promising school, that everything is good there, but she wouldn't even listen. In a fit of rage, my mother shouted that it was not for nothing that Dad got rid of us when he left. All because we were kids and too troubled. That hurt my heart. You know, I didn't expect to hear those words. I stupidly turned around and went nowhere. On the way, I went into the school stadium to be alone, to think. Suddenly, I heard a cough from behind me. "What are you doing here?" "Waiting for you." "Can we settle this on the spot?" Bravely. And we got into a fight. We were punching each other in the face, in the legs and arms. We were punching with enormous anger. It seemed that we wanted to vent our anger, not focus on each other. And after a couple of minutes, there was no more strength left. We just lay down on the grass and stared at the stars. I was spitting blood, and Connor was touching his injured eye and lip. Divorced? Yeah. I'm sorry, man. Don't be so harsh. You don't know anything about it. Look, my dad left when my youngest sibling was barely 3 months old. My mum didn't know what to do. She couldn't go out to work, so my little brother and I unloaded wagons, cleaned swimming pools and walked dogs. It seemed to me at the time that they didn't share something between them. Then today my mother said she and my father have just messed up kids. My mum used to say that sometimes too. But you know, I don't believe her. She's weak now and needs support and protection. So does your mother. And if you shut down, if you fixate on yourself, you'll have no one to protect her. We're the only ones now in our mother's lives. I didn't believe her until the end. I didn't even believe it when I saw my father with another woman. How could he betray her like that? How could he? Look, man, things happen in life. We can't be responsible for what our fathers did, but completely for our own, yes. I've taken responsibility for myself and my family, and I advise you to do the same. Yeah, you're not as dumb as I thought you were. Neither are you. We parted in silence without saying goodbye. We bumped into each other sometimes in the corridors, but just nodded our heads faintly. We realized that we had more in common than we thought, and that there was no point in all this competition. I made up with my mum, and she apologized, saying that she'd been hot-headed, just like I'd thought. Connor's parents divorced. His father left the principal's office, skipped town. Now we have a different principal, who I finally introduced to my mother, and she believed I was a student and I wasn't even expelled. So, just because your school has a couple of cool, tough guys fighting, that doesn't mean that they're narcissistic cocksuckers. Who knows? Maybe they're going through the hardest time of their lives right now. Don't add fuel to the fire.
Hi everyone, my name is Kerr. I lost my father 5 years ago because of my mother. She did everything she could to get rid of him with my hands, because she knew that his main weakness was me. You can't even imagine what it's like to become a tool in the relationship of two adults of your own people and ruin their marriage, knowing how much they love you. My mother never forgave my father for his infidelity and understood that he would not give her a divorce, much less give me to her. So she did the smartest thing, left home and then used me to punish my father. We were a normal family. I loved both my parents equally. They worked and fully provided for my life. I went to a good private school. At 16, I already had my own car. My father worked as a judge, and my mother ran her own business. She had a small boutique with fashionable women's rags. As you can imagine, the work of my father and mother was nervous, but my father was particularly tired. He often came home late, without mood, in his thoughts. I was usually asleep by the time he arrived. And then came a black streak in the family, and I began to wake up from parental quarrels. My mother traditionally greeted my father with shouts, even began to drink sometimes in the evenings. Their cursing grew louder and more aggressive, and I was unwittingly a witness to all this. They didn't know I was listening, and I didn't want to hear it myself. Mom accused Dad of cheating. She said she had proof. She found someone else's lipstick in Dad's car, and then read their correspondence on his phone while he was sleeping. The moment she told him this, I felt sick. I felt so bad that I doubled over. I could not believe that this was happening in my family, with my parents who had lived together for almost 18 years. I didn't want to lose any of them because I loved both of them equally. My mother threatened to divorce me. She shouted that she would not tolerate such treatment, and she also said that she would take me to her home. My father, as a lawyer, was well aware that the law would leave a minor son with his mother, so he did not want that. As I said, my father doted on me. He had nothing left, and he also threatened her that if she filed for a divorce, he would deprive her of all property, as well as her parental rights. He reminded me again where and by whom he worked. Then Dad suggested a compromise. Just forget about everything and leave it as it is. But my mother was furious. She wasn't going to give up just like that, and she knew it wouldn't be easy. In general, a month had passed since the quarrel. It was the worst month of my life. There was such a tense atmosphere at home. My parents did not talk to each other, and each of them tried to buy my attention. Every day they took turns offering me things, toys, gadgets, just money, and then it even came to foreign trips. Of course, it was all cool at first. I was happy. And then I was disgusted. They behaved like children. I freaked out and told them to immediately stop competing for the role of generous parent. Then there was silence. They stopped talking, even to me, but not for long. And then one morning, I woke up and found that my mother was gone. She left a note on my desk saying that she felt unwanted and betrayed, and by me too. She wrote that she hoped to see some understanding from her son, but this did not happen. So she was forced to leave home. I read all this, and I was overcome with panic. I had no idea what to do, how to get it back, where it was. Was everything all right? I confess that I wept bitterly. I felt my guilt and responsibility as a son. Why didn't I stand up for her? Why didn't you talk to your father? I immediately called her on her cell phone, and when I heard how bitterly she was crying, my heart sank. I asked her where she was, asked her to forgive me, and she cried bitterly, then finally said that she could not go back to the house of traitors and hung up. That same day, I waited for my father. He came in late, as usual, and was very surprised that I was still awake. He asked where my mother was and why I was sitting in the kitchen at this hour. I'd been thinking about what to say to him all day. In general, the dialogue was direct and hard. I told him that he was not acting like a man. You betrayed my mother, and then you bragged and threatened to get involved with her. Did you tell her that you would leave her with nothing and take me, her child, from her? Dad, aren't you ashamed? You know, I've always admired you. You are a judge. You protect the victims. You make fair decisions. And at the same time, realizing that you are wrong, you mock your wife like this? How do you look into my eyes after that, Dad? I asked him a question. I knew my father couldn't say anything against it because he knew I was right. Then I took a deep breath and asked him to go away and leave us alone. His eyes widened. My father began to say something quickly, as if to justify himself. He asked me not to say such words. I knew that this was my trump card. Dad only listened to me implicitly. He loved me so much. I was firm in my decision, so Dad just packed up the next day and left as I asked. He promised not to disturb us again, and said that he hoped I would forgive him. After he left, the house was empty. No mom or dad. I didn't feel any more alone. That's how I went from a teenager to an adult. I decided the fate of my family. Then I immediately called my mother and told her everything as it is. She was crying again and arrived in the evening. She hugged me and thanked me for standing up for her. I couldn't help it. That's about how we became a single-parent family. My father didn't show up as I asked. I didn't even write to him because my mother wanted me to. We started a new life. It was hard, but we got used to it. And one night, I heard my mother talking on the phone. I guessed it was Aunt Gray, a friend of hers from Denmark. My mother said that she punished this scumbag, my father, with the hands of her own son. I knew his weak spot. It was enough to just cry to Kira on the phone. He is a boy with a big heart, my mother said. I couldn't believe I was being taken advantage of. And my own mother. What have I done? I've ruined everything. The first thing I wanted to do was call my father and tell him everything. I felt bad for myself. I understood that my father was still to blame. After all, it was all because of his infidelity. But my mother was very cruel to me. Then I thought that if my dad found out about her plan, he would destroy it, and I would feel guilty again. I wanted to find him and communicate, at least in secret, but it turns out that he almost immediately left for another country. I don't know where. I've been looking for him ever since. From that moment on, I realized that it was better not to interfere in the affairs of my elders. They must solve their own problems. How sorry I am that our friendly family has broken up like this.